Welcome into episode 304 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Bridget Prue and Scott McLaughlin. It's a happy Sunday because the Bruins did get a Game 1 victory over the Toronto Maple Leafs at the TD Garden last night, 5-1. It's a tired Sunday for Bridget. You know, her and Scott were at the Garden until 1:30 last night doing post.
I was gonna say, what? Not a tired Sunday for me?
Oh, no, yeah, but you fell asleep. You fell asleep when you got home. I didn't fall asleep till 3:30. And then I woke up at 6:30 for Sunday skate. So
well, that's not my fault. I mean,
yes,
I slept like 2 to 6. I think I got an extra hour of sleep than you.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's the Bridget and Scott pissing contest of who got less sleep. They're both tired. They're both giving it their all. You know, double shifting today after Sunday skate early in the morning. Now we got the skate pod at
fueled
4
by
o'clock.
Reese's.
Yeah, exactly. She's got the artificial sugar going.
Mm-hmm.
Little midday pick.
Are those Easter Reese's?
Yes, they are.
The holiday ones are always better.
They're good.
Scott's a Peeps guy. I don't know if you know that, Bridget.
I am not. I actually despise Peeps.
Okay.
What about candy corn?
No, gross.
All right. Well, let's just, skip the candy talk and get right to the hockey talk. So again, like I said, 5-1 win, Game 1. Bridget and Scott, opening shifts. Let's get right into it.
Well, obviously the big topic is who starts in goal in Game 2, and you guys know I'm pro rotation, and I'm not changing on that. I would go with Ullmark for Game 2, but I also think I don't think there's a wrong answer yet. Like to me, there's not really a wrong answer to this until one plan or the other isn't working. Like until there's a crack in the armor.
Which you won't know until there's a loss.
Right. Because it's like you can justifiably choose a rotation, say, hey, this is what's worked the last 2 years. And then you can stick with that until someone has an off game. Or you can say Swayman was great in Game 1. He's been great against Toronto all year. Ride the hot hand and force the Maple Leafs to prove that they can beat Swayman. That also makes sense. And then the question becomes, okay, what do you do if and when they do beat Swayman? So to me, like the more heated, as crazy as it sounds, because I feel like this has already been a pretty heated conversation for weeks and months on end. But I really feel like it gets turned up like once something starts to go awry. So to me, I'd go Ullmark. I'd go rotation because that's what I've thought is the best strategy for a while, and I don't see any reason to change. But am I going to sit here and yell and scream if they start Swayman about it being a mistake? No, I don't think that's a mistake. I think that's a completely justifiable, logical decision.
Yeah, the same thing I said this morning was I'm really okay if they start either of them. And that's why it's not like it. That's why it's okay to believe in the rotation, but also believe that Swayman is playing well, right? Both of those things can be true at the same time. The rotation has worked all season. I'm okay to see it for the first 4 games and then decide after that. But I told this to Scott and Razor thought I was being wishy-washy. But this morning, after getting 3 hours of sleep, having a chance to try to wake myself up in the car thinking back on the game, I'm thinking to myself, God, if there was any type of game that someone would have had to play to steal the net in the first game, that's what Swayman did. See,
this is why you got less sleep, because you're staying up, flip-flopping in your mind, couldn't decide. And I was convicted in my beliefs, and I slept peacefully.
I'm not flip-flopping at all. I think the rotation could work. I also think that Swayman played so well that it feels like it would throw something off to take him out. Brian, I don't know what you think. Maybe we could get more to this. I'm
gonna punt on my opinion for just a few minutes. We'll get through the opening shifts and we'll get back to it. So Bridget, why don't we go right to your opening shift?
Okay, so right now I'm working on a story about Jake DeBrusk and kind of how the playoffs are a time for him to be able to reset and focus on some of the things that are important to him at this time of year. Obviously, winning the Stanley Cup being a major one, but bringing his value up at the end of this contract year obviously has to be in the back of his mind as well. He starts out the playoffs with 2 goals, both on the power play. He also made a lot of really good plays surrounding those scoring opportunities. His effort was great. He was in the right places. He had a great game, and we can get into some of the stats about him against the Leafs and some of his playoff stats as well as we go throughout the podcast. But even though he had, so this season he had 40 points. Last season he had 50. He played 16 more games this season than he did last year. So the points percentage, points per game was down for him. Not his worst season, but also a step back, right? And he was honest with the media. He came right out and when he answered Scott's question about being happy to be able to reset, he came right out and said that obviously I wasn't happy with my season, which was holding himself accountable. And I think he answered everything in the press conference very well after game 1. Sounded humble, sounded to, be self-reflective. And this could be the beginning of a big run for him if he can continue even just the stats that he had last playoffs. I'll pull him up now. He had, it was only the 7 games, obviously. He had 6 points. If that's what, it was 4 goals and 2 assists. If that's what he does again this first round, I think he'd be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have to be consistent here because I mentioned on an episode last week or the week before that even if Jake DeBrusk goes off in the postseason and has a incredible run here, I'm still not paying him probably what he's looking for in an extension. I just think there's far too much inconsistency in the regular season, and I know the postseason matters 10 times, obviously, but I can't just turn the other way and neglect his inconsistencies in the last 3-4 seasons. But that's a conversation for a different day. And maybe he plays so incredible this postseason that I change my mind and I say, you know what, even if he is inconsistent as a scorer in the regular season, if he's gonna be this postseason type player for them, knowing that they're always kind of going to be a postseason team, then maybe I'll change my tune. But again, that's for down the line. As far as last night, Jake DeBrusk was fantastic, and it has again. And I feel like every time I talk about DeBrusk playing well, which does happen on occasion, I don't want to act like I'm the Grinch all the time with Jake DeBrusk. I always kind of say it's not just the scoring. He didn't have to score the 2 goals last night to notice that he was all over the place in a good way. And it just so happens that when you play that way, good things happen. And this kind of leads into my opening shift too, because my opening shift is that the Bruins were led by their depth in game 1. I'm reluctant to call Jake DeBrusk their depth because I do think he is somebody who's relied upon to be a depth scorer. He should be a scorer. But Jake DeBrusk definitely led the way. I thought Pat Maroon led the way physically from a leadership standpoint, physicality standpoint, makes a very non-sexy but responsible play on the wall to lead to the Johnny Beecher goal. So Maroon, Beecher, Boquist lead in that first goal of the game. I thought Lauko had a great game. Obviously, DeBrusk with 2 goals. Carlo with the goal for the Bruins. So players that you don't expect necessarily to lead on the score sheet led the Bruins in the score sheet in this one. I thought Pasternak was quiet offensively. I thought Marchand was quiet offensively. McAvoy, he had his moments. But I think it's a good thing because there's going to be games where obviously these guys get it going. So it's good to know early on in the postseason, at least, that if the top guys aren't going, there could be some depth right there scoring. And when the depth scoring goes away, the top guys will be there. And I think that's a good recipe.
Yeah, for sure. Like that was absolutely one of the big takeaways from this game, right from, the fourth line's first shift of the game. Scoring. I thought Beecher made really good plays in both zones all night. Maroon leads the team in hits. The third line, didn't have a ton of chances offensively, but Lauko and Frederick each had 5 hits. Geekie had 3. And when the Leafs started to get some momentum in the third and cut it to 4-1, it was that line that responded and, essentially put the game away and got momentum back on the Bruins side. Geeky threw a huge hit on the forecheck and Nick Robertson. And then that line went to work and had over a minute of offensive zone time. That ends with Lauko drawing a penalty. So, yeah, like they stepped up when the Bruins needed it. And so we know that bottom sixes, third lines in particular, can often decide playoff games, playoff series. You're going to need it to go on a run. So in that sense, really encouraging start from the Bruins bottom six in this game.
Yeah, I thought that the third line brought a lot of energy. I think they made the right call with Lauko in instead of Van Riemsdyk. I think it was pretty clear the energy level that line had probably wouldn't have been quite as high if Van Riemsdyk was in there, just because that his level over the past 2 months, I would say, maybe a little bit less than that, just hasn't been there. And Lauko, that's one thing he always brings is the energy. And he had this moment after Pat Maroon throws Liljegren into the Bruins bench that you see Lauko hit him while he's in the bench, like while he's like all the way onto, I think it was like Trent Frederick's lap. Lauko punches him. Frederick and Coyle both go, the hell, what are you doing? He just was at a different level. And that's kind of how, and that was a good thing though. Obviously a good thing that he didn't get a penalty on that, because I think that's what Coyle and Frederick were worried about. But he brought his intensity level up. And so that's what the third line was good for in game one. And then you look at the fourth line and Johnny Beecher, who wasn't even on the Bruins roster, for the last game of the regular season, he was back on Providence's roster at the time, comes in and scores the first goal of the series. It was 2 minutes and 26 seconds into the game. He finishes off, which was a play that started with Maroon, goes to Boquist, goes to Beecher. So everyone on that fourth line was involved in the goal, got a point on the goal, and it set the tone from there on out. You felt the Bruins had the momentum. They hit like 3 more posts in the first, I think it was all in the first period. And you're just going, oh, wow. So they're just not getting these bounces. They could be up like, I don't know, 3-0. Eventually they were, and they did extend the lead, but it just felt like they were doing everything right. And it started with the tone being set by the Beecher goal, some huge hits by Maroon, and some good shifts by the third line.
I think an area where people may not give the Bruins a lot of credit going into this series is their team speed. I think that it's very easy to call Toronto's offense, faster, more skilled, whatever. But I think, and that's not untrue, but Jesper Boquist can wheel. Johnny Beecher can wheel. Lauko can wheel. Up and down the lineup, like Heinen's a good skater. Zaka's a good skater. Pasta, Marchand, like DeBrusk. These guys can move, and they might not have up and down the lineup outside of Pasternak, like, the dynamic supporting cast of Mitch Marner and William Nylander to support Austin Matthews, right? But the Bruins play at a high pace that I don't think people necessarily notice from afar. But one thing that I noticed in this game is that, yes, Toronto tried to set the tone early physically. They're not going to be afraid of Boston, whatever, same old song and dance of we've changed. And there's a difference between playing tough and playing disciplined. And clearly Max Domi, Marchand, for whatever reason, is already it's almost like Domi's trying to get in Marchand and Boston's head before Marchand can do that to Toronto. But the effect of that is that Marchand's getting into their head. So that was something I noticed. And one other thing I noticed primarily in this game is that while Toronto has Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and William Nylander when he's playing for them, and John Tavares and others, I think Toronto is going to have a tough time in this series transitioning into offense from their D zone. I think that your forwards, they can't break the puck out by themselves to lead to offense. I look at Joel Edmondson and Labushkin and Jake McCabe and Simone Benoit. Like, they don't they're not guys that move the puck as well as Boston's D-core. So Boston's defense isn't just better than Toronto's defense defensively. They're also better in transition, getting the forwards the puck. So I wouldn't be too surprised if you were to see Toronto make a personnel change in the back end in game 2, maybe bring in maybe a Mark Giordano, maybe a TJ Brody, just to kind of get some guys that might be able to transition the puck better for Toronto's forwards.
Yeah.
Scott, how many defensemen did you say were practicing the other day? 11? Something ridiculous.
They had 10 at Friday's practice, because they also have Cade Weber, who they just signed from BU, and Connor Timmins was the 10th. Yeah, I mean, like, Giordano and Brody are just sitting there, and it's like, those look like very odd names to see healthy scratched, but they're older and they've slowed down. And like, if you look into the analytics, like, they haven't been very good puck movers this season, which is probably why they're not in the lineup to start the series. Is, what was once the strength of both guys has not been a strength for much of the season. So, you would think, like, those are the guys you bring in that to help with that. And if they can find their skating legs, then maybe they still could be. But they really haven't been, which is why Toronto has kind of opted for brawn over, finesse. Like, they're just putting in their biggest, strongest, hardest hitters. And Brian, like, you nailed it. Like, that's the trade-off, is they don't have a whole lot of puck moving back there. So, on one thing, but before we go too far away, that I wanted to mention on that the Bruins' first goal, yes, all 3 members of the fourth line get involved and get on the score sheet. But even before that puck gets to Maroon, Hampus Lindholm takes a hit to move it to Brandon Carlo. Brandon Carlo takes a hit to move it up to Maroon. Start of a great night for that pairing. Carlo scores the second goal of the game. Lindholm picks up an assist on that. They're matched up against Austin Matthews much of the night. During their 5-on-5 minutes facing off against him, Bruins break even in shots, have an edge in scoring chances. Really limited what that Matthews line could do. And that, Montgomery said after the game, like, those two have had success against Matthews going back this regular season and even last season. And, I like, when I dove into the numbers before the series, it's like, I didn't go back to last year, but just looking at the regular season games this year, you could see that, which is why I thought when things seemed like they were trending towards, like, oh, they're going to have Lindholm and McAvoy together, I thought that was a little odd, because to me, I was like, I think Lindholm Carlo should be the matchup against Matthews. And sure enough, as we were talking about in Sunday Skate this morning, like, maybe it's just some misdirection from Montgomery in practice, oh yeah, we're going to have Lindholm McAvoy together. He got asked like a bunch of questions about that in one of his press conferences, which is always funny, like, because he gives a serious answer and talks about how good it is to have two great defensemen on the ice at the same time. And then right out of the gate in game 1, he does something different. So, but yeah, that's it. On home ice, the Bruins can get that matchup as much as they want. And it's going to be, that's one of the things, Sheldon Keefe's going to have to try to make an adjustment for. And you're not really going to be able to get Matthews away from them without last change. So do you switch out one of his line mates? Do you put Mitch Marner on his line and say, well, if we can't get Matthews away from those guys, do we try to load up and give him, a more offensive winger than Max Domi? Like, I could see something like that.
They went to Matthews with Marner and Tavares for like a shift or 2 in the third. But then by the end of the game, they were back to their same lines that they started with. So they only tried it very briefly.
Yeah. And like, some of that's just desperation of trying to come back. You're going to just throw all your best players on the ice, for offensive zone faceoffs.
So I guess my question is, we're talking a little bit about adjustments that Toronto might have to make, but are there any personnel adjustments that you think the Bruins should try for next game? Because game 2, and we can get to the goalie part of it later, I'm more talking about roster, like, forwards, defensemen. Are there any adjustments that either of you would make to the lineup for game 2?
You win 5-1. It's tough to really call for adjustments. I think the only real adjustment would be Wotherspoon in for somebody, maybe a Shattenkirk, but you don't want to do that because I thought Shattenkirk was fine for the most part, and also is part of the 1A 1B power play they have going on right now. So I don't, and up front I don't see I don't see any changes really after that one.
Yeah, I agree. I would just keep the same lineup. I thought everything kind of worked to plan. You got the matchups you wanted. Like, Montgomery on Sunday. So the Bruins didn't practice on Sunday, but they had meetings at Warrior and had media availability. And Jim Montgomery did say, he didn't think they generated enough 5-on-5 offense. He didn't think they held on to pucks enough in the offensive zone. So, I'm sure he's looking for ways to do that, but I wouldn't think it requires lineup personnel changes. I think there's probably, strategically things that you're trying to do different before, it's not like you have like the greatest options to really change that like Van Riemsdyk can do that, but it's just been too long since we've seen it. Parker Wotherspoon doesn't help with that. So if he's kind of identifying that as like, here's an area where we want to be better for game 2, I think you can do it with the lineup you already have.
Well, and Toronto also plays with a level of speed that I don't think fits JVR's game necessarily right now. It's not that he couldn't play in that type of game, but I think Lauko right now, and again, right now you have Lauko with Frederick and Geeky, and you have Maroon with Beecher and Boquist. On paper, you tell me which one's the fourth line. There really isn't one. They're kind of like, they both have a similar, I would say, ceiling on paper as a potential third line. Like so they're deploying both of those. Well, actually, I shouldn't say this because I haven't checked the time on ice last night. How do those two lines stack up on 5-on-5 ice time compared to each other last night? Do we have those numbers at any point? That'd be good to know at some point, because if they're used equally, then I have less of an issue with Lauko on that line.
The third line did get more. So Frederick had just 5-on-5 ice time. Frederick had almost 13 minutes. Geeky just under 12. Lauko 11. And then all the fourth line is Beecher, Boquist, Maroon were under 10. Beecher had the most, 943. Boquist 854. Maroon 706.
Well, yeah, so you're given the even strength,
right?
Because the total is more.
But that's more telling, right? Because they will use certain guys in certain situations on special teams. But so they are using that third line more than that fourth line at even strength. I guess, Bridget, to circle it back to your original question, because right now I agree. Like, JVR hasn't done anything to come into this series, and I just don't think that what I was getting to with the speed factor is if you're playing Florida, maybe, or like Washington, I don't know, somebody like that. But I think the speed element, the Bruins like Lauko's speed and physicality. But if Justin Brazeau were healthy, I do think that, let me put it this way. If the Bruins if they win game 2, say, and Brazeau's healthy for game 3, I do think they might put him back into the lineup at some point, and Maroon and Lauko would come out. So maybe you put up Maroon with Frederick and Geeky, and you put Brazeau back with Beecher and Boquist, or vice versa. But I do think that's the only personnel change that the Bruins would elect to go to right now. It's just that Brazeau is not healthy, and so it's not an option at the moment.
Yeah. And well, then here comes the other obvious question. If everything worked so well in game 1 and you don't want to make any personnel changes in terms of skaters, but you want to make one in net?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm really trying to be respectful, because I'm really not shitting on the theory of a goalie rotation. I just don't think that it should be one on, one off right now. I think like so there was a Twitter poll on WEEI last night after the game. I think there was around 800 votes or something like that, and I think it was 60-40, something like that, in favor of going with Swayman in game 2 versus Ullmark in game 2.
It was actually closer than that. It was like 54.5%, or was it? It was just about. We'll just call it 55% Swayman, 45% Ullmark.
Yeah, that's where it's at. 55-45.
55-45. Okay. So Scott, because Bridget seems to be a little bit on the fence, I'll ask you real quick.
Well, I'm not on the fence. I want Swayman to start game 2.
Okay. So come over
but
to the
I'm also not saying you have to keep with them the whole time. So
no. Okay, and I want to make this very clear. I'm not saying that either. Like I said a minute ago, I'm not anti-rotation. But I think it's not every other game or bust. So Scott, let me ask you a question. And I mean this seriously. Jeremy Swayman has played 4 games against Toronto this year. He's given up 5 goals. That includes the 5-1 victory over Toronto in game 1. Game 2, you want to take him out. Because and before you answer, like I'm really not trying to be a wise ass, but in my opinion, if you play Swayman in game 2, or Swayman has confidence against Toronto, clearly. And right now, there might be a bit of a mental hurdle with Toronto playing against Swayman. So if you play Ullmark in game 2, after Swayman has played Toronto 4 times this year, giving up 5 goals, including 1 in game 1, and Ullmark goes in game 2, and he gets lit the fuck up, and you give Toronto confidence, and you give them their scoring touch back, and you even the series, like, with all due respect, are you serious with that? You and the other 45%? And real quick, you can put Swayman in game 2 and lose, and then put Ullmark in game 3. Like, if you put Ullmark in game 2 and lose and it goes to 1-1, I just think if you're going to go to 1-1 in the series, it should be because they beat Swayman, not Ullmark. It's and I'm not even trying to be confrontational. I think you're fucking crazy. I really do.
With all due respect, you're
with
fucking
all
crazy,
due respect, I think you're fucking insane. I really do. Goalie A has given up 5 goals in 4 games against the team, and you want to put in the other guy in game 2. If anybody should be talking about goalies for game 2, it should be the team that lost 5-1. And again, I'm not saying
which they also are, by the way, for very different reasons.
I'm not saying not to play Linus Ullmark in game 3. What I'm saying is, and it's a very simple stance, go with Swayman in this particular series until he loses. I think you avoid all controversy. If he loses game 2, bam, Ullmark game 3, rotation on.
Yeah, I agree with Brian.
I think that's a valid stance. I'm not gonna call you fucking insane, but
I'll call you fucking insane. You son of a bitch. I'm just
kidding.
Listen, I've watched the rotation work for 2 years. I've watched it raise both goalies' level of play. I've watched them be refreshed. I've seen them get used to it. I saw the Bruins do it for the last 25 regular season games. Neither goalie has played back-to-back games in 2 months. And I just think it works. So my stance is the same as it was last year, which is why am I stopping something that works so well come the playoffs?
We don't know that it works in the postseason. Now I know your response. They haven't tried it. I got it. I know. I understand. But Scott, seriously, if
we also don't know that riding Swayman works in the playoffs.
But I know, but I'm not saying to ride him. I'm saying to play him.
Neither one of these goalies has won a playoff series.
I'm not saying to ride Swayman. I'm saying to play him in game 2. I'm very much going with what you guys are saying, which is take it 1 game at a time. Like, I'm not saying to not play Ullmark in game 3. Even if Swayman wins game 2, I'm not even saying don't go Ullmark in game 3. I'm saying specifically in game 2, where you have a chance to take a stranglehold on the series 2-0 versus 1-1. If you play Ullmark and the Bruins lose and it's because of his play and it brings Toronto back to the series 1-1 and they get confident with the puck and they win the series, you have to tell me right now, you'd be sitting there all summer being like, that's a bad choice.
I'm not operating from a position of what of like the worst case scenario that I'm afraid of. I'm operating from
but why would you look at all angles?
I'm operating from a position of I have this really good thing that works that I believe in, and so I'm going to continue to use it. That's how I feel. Like I've watched a very successful goalie rotation for 2 years, and I believe in it, and I want to see it in the playoffs because I believe it can also work in the playoffs.
I feel like this has become like the divisiveness level of politics.
Well, here's why it's frustrating. Despite me saying to go Swayman in game 2, I'm not saying no to the goalie rotation. I think if Swayman were to go in game 2 and lose, and you come back in game 3 with another 1A type goalie, that's the beauty of having these guys. But to do it when he just won 5-1 and has given up 5 goals all year against Toronto, like that specific matchup works. Maybe against Florida you do one other game, but specifically with Toronto, I just think it's so obvious Swayman has something on these guys. It's like, why are we talking about this right now? I'm serious. I don't get it.
But also each time he's beaten Toronto, he didn't play the game before it. So, go back to March.
I don't think that matters, Scott.
Oh
I think
my God.
I think we gotta get rid of that as it.
That's since game 82. It's been what, 6 days? Come on.
Yeah, I don't think that matters.
They rotate hold on. So now the rotation hasn't helped either goalie stay at the top of their game. That's what we're saying now?
No, that's not it at all. Just the fact that it's irrelevant that his wins against Toronto previously came after. Like, we know what.
Why is that irrelevant? Was. They came while they were rotating. That's incredibly relevant. That's what I'm talking about.
Fine, but
I disagree.
If you're pointing at that, I think it's an incredibly weak argument. I think that's ridiculous.
All right, well, fine. We'll just throw out the last 2 years. All right, that's good. Let's do what we did last year. Let's try to ride one goalie for a series and wait until game 7 to change.
I disagreed with riding one goalie last year. I thought Ullmark should have been gone after game 5. I mean, so I'm not saying not to play both goalies. I'm saying right now, with Toronto is playing with such little confidence offensively against Swayman and the Bruins. If you put in a different look and they have success against Ullmark, then your response is, okay, fine, no problem. Go back to Swayman in game 3 and whatever. But it's like at that point, maybe now Swayman's off. Like I don't see why it's so controversial to say go with the guy that's played well against Toronto just in game 2 to see if you can get a cushion in the series. I don't get it.
I think that's really the important part here is that if Swayman does the exact same thing again in game 2, you're up 2-0 on a series, and that really puts the pressure on Toronto. Like it's because of the time it is in the series and how well the result was the first time. Like you need to not make a mistake with game 2 because you're back. Game 1 doesn't mean anything if you blow game 2. Like you're back to square one. You're back to where you started out. So you need to build on the lead. And it looked good in game 1. And I just being there in the building and also talking to him after the game, being around him, watching the other parts that are in between whistles or like how he's looking in his net, like how calm and comfortable he was looking and how confident he was. Like that's a guy that if you take him out of the net right now, you risk deflating that.
What if before the series started, it was very clearly laid out to both goalies that were rotating the first 2 games?
I don't know if that's what happened, though.
Well, none of us do because they won't tell us. I'm saying, what if, because Jim Montgomery said they had a plan, Don Sweeney said they had a plan. What if that was the plan? Then why would Swayman mentally be off if he knew going in that was the plan?
I think that in theory, Scott, I think like if they did do that, I think that's fine, and maybe mentally he should be prepared for game 3 if that's the case. But it happens to all of us all the time in life. We're mentally prepared for something, but our body feels differently. Like I don't like I think simply to act like I'll just ask you this way. So Swayman just played last night on Saturday, and so he's feeling good about his game. Okay. Ullmark hasn't played since that stinker against Ottawa in game 82 on Tuesday or whatever it was. Scott, for game 2, specifically game 2, do you think Ullmark gives you a better chance to win that game than Swayman? If the answer is no or 50-50, then why not go with Swayman? And I don't know how it could be. I don't know how you could. I don't know how anyone. And the reason why it's controversial, Scott, is because 45% of people want Ullmark in and 55% want Swayman. So that's why it's controversial. If people ask themselves that question, who gives the Bruins a better chance to win just game 2? And the answer is Ullmark. I don't know how they think that. That's all that's the only question that should be at hand here going into game 2.
Because Swayman hasn't played back-to-back games in 2 months.
No, see,
now,
I think
listen, that's not how I would have approached a stretch run. Like I would have ridden one goalie or the other for 3 games at some point.
So you didn't answer the question, though. You didn't answer the question. Who gives them a better chance to win game 2?
Linus Ullmark.
Game 2. No.
Yeah, and he's gonna say that so that his argument stands. But I don't want to speak for Scott, and you can tell me I'm lying, but I think in your heart of hearts, you think the answer is Swayman, and you're being stubborn with the goalie rotation. And I don't get it because I think the goalie rotation is very much alive, even if Swayman plays game 2. I think it's just try to get yourself one game at a time who is a better goalie for that game. And there's a lot of factors at play. Like Bridget mentioned, time in the series. If Ullmark goes in and they lose, now it's 1-1. If Swayman goes in and they lose and it's 1-1, at least you lost with the guy that like has shown he's good against this team.
Yeah. And
ultimately for me, what it comes back to is I believe in the rotation. I believe in what I've seen for 2 years. And I think they are both at their best when they're rotating. And until one of them gives me a reason not to keep rotating, I'm going to rotate.
It doesn't have to be a 50-50 though, Scott. Like when I say I'm pro rotation, I mean I'm pro playing both guys when it seems like the right thing to do to make a change. I'm not saying go 1 and then 1 and then 1 and then 1.
But the best on a rotation, that's going game by game. It's not a rotation.
Okay, but that's not how it's been in the past though. In the past, it's guys they have a number 1 and that's the guy. Unless someone plays awful, horrible, like
yes,
it's still different.
But that's not what this team has done. This team rotates goalies. They did it the last quarter plus of the season.
This is what I'll say, and I have a lot of more things to yell at you, but and I'm tired. But so the first being, if you have 2 goalies, right, 2 really good goalies, and that's a strength that you have, and you didn't get rid of one at the trade deadline for one reason or another, the reported reason was because Ullmark denied the trade, but you have these 2 goalies, and that's an asset because other teams don't have that, right? The only way you put that to work for yourself is if you find a way to use them the right way. And
right, and I think they have.
Scott, I'm talking. And there's a hybrid version of what there's a hybrid version that is more equipped for the playoffs than just a 50-50 split.
Then why didn't they try a hybrid version in the regular season?
They tried to trade Ullmark's ass. He wouldn't go. He wouldn't leave.
All right, then why didn't they hybrid it after that? Like,
because you have to optimize the asset.
Because Jim Montgomery, after that, said that down the stretch they would consider playing someone 3 games in a row at some point. He said that. And then they didn't do it. They decided to keep rotating. Why? Why did they decide to do it? Do you think it's maybe because they said, hey, you know what? Actually, we think this is the best way to keep both goalies at the top of their game.
Do you think that Jim Montgomery is willing to die on the hill that you're currently willing to die on right now? Like, he is not going to risk his entire coaching career when something as obvious as this,
Bridget, what do you think?
In the face, I'm not done, is looking him in the face. Like, you think he's going to die on the 50-50 split for his, like, the first round exit?
What do you think's going to happen to Jim Montgomery if for the second year in a row he rotates all regular season, ditches it in the playoffs, and they lose in the first round.
But no one here is saying to ditch
I'll tell you what I think. I think he's going to get fired. I think that's what's going to happen.
No one's saying to ditch the goalie usage. It's just a matter of like Linus Ullmark hasn't played in almost a week. I can see Austin Matthews coming down the right wing side and snapping one over his shoulder because he hasn't been in the game. And Swayman just played the guys 2 nights ago and has played well all year against them. And I just think just game 2, Swayman, game 3, Ullmark, fine. Maybe even game 4. But like, give your again. There's
if you're not playing Ullmark because he hasn't played in almost a week, then why on earth would you play him in game 3, 4, or 5 when it's been a week and a half or 2 weeks?
Because at least a couple reasons. Because if the Bruins win game 2, now at least you have a 2-game cushion in the series, a little bit more leash there. And if Swayman loses game 2, Ullmark's going in because Swayman didn't get the job done. Insert goalie rotation. Like, I just think I think that people who want to put in Ullmark in game 2, he better win. And he better win with flying colors, because if he loses that game, and if the Bruins lose the game and it's primarily because of poor goalie play, and Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner are feeling really good about themselves, and they come back to win the series, you guys should all have egg on your face all off season. And I'm not saying not to play Ullmark in this series. I'm just saying game 2 specifically, just go with Swayman again. That's it.
Okay, well, then I want it on the record that if they do start Swayman game 2 and he loses, I'm going to dance on your grave. And
oh no,
how big of a mistake
dance on the grave of the goalie who gave up 5 goals in 4 games. He lost the game. Oh no. How look at the egg on my face there. Again, it's like, I don't think that's not a controversial take by me. There's a reason why Andrew Raycroft is telling you guys.
It's not. And that was my opening. Like, we're yelling about this, but my opening shift was I actually don't think it's controversial. Like, I don't think whatever they do in my opinion, whatever they do in game 2, I don't think is wrong, quote unquote wrong. I think wrong decisions come when plan A starts to go sideways and you don't adjust quick enough.
What exactly is the plan? What exactly?
But what I don't get is why you think rotating is so controversial. Like, after 2 years of it, why is it controversial?
We don't think rotating is controversial. We think game 2, Swayman should start.
Yeah, so don't rotate.
Not against the rotate. I don't know, Scott.
Starting
who are you?
Who is this? Not rotating.
I think is this?
I think my goalie rotation in my head, my goalie rotation is as soon as a goalie loses, next guy goes in.
Yes.
No ifs, ands, or buts. That's a rotation.
What if it's 1-0 in overtime?
I'm not playing the what if game, Scott.
Again, if it's 1-0 in overtime, it would depend on how that goalie played. If he had 55 saves and his team had 20 shots, it's a different story. But to be consistent, fine, go to the next guy.
Okay, so then I'll throw to you the same hypothetical I threw at Razor. All right, you start Swayman game 2.
Yep.
Bruins win 5-4. He gave up 2 soft ones.
Yep.
So you're sticking with him game 3 because he's still winning?
No, I'm going with Ullmark. It really is a feel thing. It's a game by game thing.
Yep.
Like the game is played by humans, and in that situation, Scott, now the whole he hasn't played back-to-back games all year, that's where it comes into play. I don't think playing back-to-back games over the course of 3 or 4 days is that taxing on a professional athlete. But that is where I would say, yes, they're used to playing evenly. Ullmark goes in now. I'm just saying, like, I think the series is so vulnerable when it's 1-0. Like, if Toronto wins game 2 and it's because of Ullmark's poor play, I just think that it will go down as like the most head scratch thing. Teams, again, I've made my point. Andrew Raycroft, former NHL goalie, former Calder winner, is saying it's absolutely insane. Henrik Lundqvist is saying on TNT last night, he's scratching his head at everybody who would even contemplate taking out Swayman, because they understand that the game is played by humans and there's feel, and it's not played strictly by statistics and analytics. And they split most of the regular season. It's a different game for the players. Why is it not a different game for the goalie?
And I highly doubt they told them before the series started, these are the days you're playing and these are the games you're not, because it feels like they wanted that flexibility to do it game by game, like we're talking about. And by the way, Scott, you said, oh, what if they already told Ullmark he's in next game and Swayman knows he's sitting, he probably won't be as upset about it. Did you listen to his comments after the game? Like, well, I shouldn't say it that way. I know you did. Like when you listen to what he said about playing, did he sound like a guy that thought he should come out?
I think he sounded like a guy who really wanted a game one start, who had never had one in his career.
Yeah, and he killed it. He did great, and
Absolutely.
he sounded like neither of these goalies wants to sit at all.
You know what would have worked last year?
So
you know what would have worked last year against Florida, right? The Bruins are up 3-1 in that series. Okay, they lose Game 5 the way they did on a huge mistake by the goaltender, by the way. If Swayman went in the next game, which is what I would have done then, and that's what I would do now too, the Bruins win the series. But they stuck with the one guy too long, Scott. It's about knowing when to do it. And if Swayman played last night and like the Bruins lost 4-2 and there was at least 1 or 2 stinkers, yeah, Ullmark's playing game 2. But it's because of the way that he won and has played all year against Toronto, and the fact that it's only 1-0. If they go up 2-0 and you want to give Ullmark that game 3 start, you have a little bit more leash. And I'm not even like trying to like mansplain to you because I know that you are like
to Scott.
Yeah, I'm. It sounds like I'm coming down on Scott. I don't. Scott is not as stubborn as maybe my argument is making him seem. I'm just.
No, he's being stubborn today.
I do feel the need to. I feel the need to defend the 45%. You know, last week I had Bridget on my side. She flip flopped, so
I didn't flip flop.
I'm Jon Snow in the Battle of the Bastards here.
It's just it's
standing there with my sword.
I understand.
Yeah, here he goes. He's making a Game of Thrones reference.
I look, and again, part of the regular season is so much different. Like the travel schedule is different. You're playing teams on back-to-backs. You're on back-to-backs. Like you're not game planning for teams like you are for a playoff series. There's a lot of different things here, and I just think that when a goaltender has had the success he's had against not only a team, the highest offensive scoring team in the NHL all year, and then it gives up 1 goal in Game 5, 1 goal in Game 1, and they win 5-1. And I hear 45% of people saying to go with the next guy because they split. Guys, seriously, come on.
Because we believe in the rotation. Like,
yeah, but there's a such thing called nuance. Have we heard of nuance?
I believe that the Bruins.
We don't do nuance on sports radio, bro.
I believe that the Boston Bruins have 2 awesome goaltenders, and I have a ton of confidence in Linus Ullmark that if they put him in Game 2, he's going to play great and they're going to win. But if the Bruins are going to lose Game 2, it better be because the guy who has shown he can do it against that team fails and not the other guy. I just think it's too. There's nothing wrong with trying to get a 2-0 cushion. I think Swayman's the guy to give you the best chance to win Game 2. That's basically where I'm coming from. I'm not coming at it from anti-split, anti-rotation, or pro ride the guy. I'm simply looking at who gives them a better chance to win the next game. And right now it's Swayman. I don't know how you could argue that. I'm not saying that you want to see the rotation, and I get it. But I don't see here the way I see it, Swayman plays Game 2. They either win, go up 2-0, and then Ullmark's in Game 3, or Swayman goes in, they lose, and it's 1-1, and now it's Swayman. Ullmark, you're in Game 3 because the rotation's back on track.
Well, wait. So in that world, if Swayman does what he just did in Game 1 and they're up 2-0, why are you going to Ullmark in Game 3?
Because I do think that at that point, Swayman's not used to playing 3 games in a row. It's even more so than not playing 2 in a row. There's travel involved. I think they can get on the plane and Ullmark can sit there and get in the zone and be like, I'm taking Toronto by storm.
I think Ullmark was the better road player as well. I'd have to go back to his stats, but I'm pretty sure he had a better road record. Yeah. The
biggest thing for me is not having Austin Matthews going against a goalie that hasn't played in the week and getting hot. Like, if he's going to get hot against the guy that's stopped you all year so far. That's my biggest thing is, like, the second that Toronto's top guys get confident, it changes things. And if they're going to get confident, it's better to do it. I can stomach it more if they do it against the guy that stopped them all year, as opposed to a guy that's been on the bench for a week and might just not. And Ullmark might not be sharp off the hop, and that's all it takes for Matthews to fucking put 2 in. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe I'm crazy, Bridget. Maybe we're crazy. Maybe we're the crazy ones.
I would never call myself crazy. No, I call myself crazy all the time, actually. But one other thing I want to bring up, because it feels relevant, is that no matter what, I mean, if you talk to Razor, if you talk to any of the other former goalies that are analysts that are, involved in media now, they're going to tell you the same thing. Everybody wants to play every game in the playoffs, right? Like, there's no, hey, I'm cool with coming out. Swayman wants to win that net every night. So mentally, no matter if he's used to the rotation and he's done it all regular season, it feels different for him this year, because if he plays really well and he's the guy this playoffs, he makes significantly more money than if he's just a guy in the rotation. Like, this has monetary and huge career implications for Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah, I'm coming at it from like the perspective of Bruins coaches. I'm not worried about what's best for Jeremy Swayman's future. Like, I'm worried about what's
I'm talking about worry about Jeremy Swayman's mental state in terms of what conditions he's going to play best under.
Okay, well, if sitting game 2 and then getting back in for game 3 sends Jeremy Swayman into a nervous breakdown, then
which
I'm not resigning him anyways. So
I
no
don't
problem.
think it will, but like, it seems like they're in a weird situation with both of their goalies, where one they were trying to trade, the other one they went through a very contentious arbitration with in the previous offseason, who has talked about it like he has PTSD from it. But it's just such a complicated goalie situation. Maybe we're all overcomplicating it, but
Scott, can you remind me of your what's your plan again for the postseason? Because earlier you mentioned to me that Swayman shouldn't start game 2 because he's not used to playing back to back. But if I recall, you said all along you want to see the goalies rotate for the first few games and then like go kind of game by game, and that could include a guy going back to back. So why are you cherry picking when to use that argument? Because you're not saying
it's what we're starting. Like, we're just starting from 2 different places. I think we're both open to changing if needed. I'm just saying I'm riding a rotation until I have a reason not to.
Right, and I'm
saying you're going
to start a goalie until he gives me a reason not to.
Yeah,
it's the same.
Like, yeah.
I mean, ultimately, I'll say this just to kind of like put a bow on my opinion on it. I'm just very focused on giving a best chance to win the next game. If Swayman starts game 2, no matter what, I want Ullmark in game 3. So just to clarify, like, I'm not anti-rotation. It's just a matter of like, it doesn't have to be every other, like everybody's talking about it. Like, they're so anal. Oh, it'll throw Ullmark and Swayman into a tailspin if they're not rotating every other game. It's like, guys, they're professional athletes. They could both play a game or 2 or 3 in a row if need be. And it's not a big deal, but
you know what I think?
Yeah.
I think we all need a Snickers.
Can you give me some of that chocolate to the screen, Bridget? What do you have, Reese's?
Yeah, got some little bunny guys. These guys right here.
I'm telling you would think that the Bruins lost game 1 the way we're talking right now. It's such a fascinating. It's really fascinating to me.
Turns out,
yeah. I want to see the goalie rotation too. I want to see both goalies in the series. I just want to see the right guy in the right game. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Sway game 2. All right. Is there anything else we want to scream at each other about before we're done?
I don't think so. Nylander practice updates, meeting updates. Any newsworthy items before we sign off here? I feel bad. We haven't really talked about the good stuff from the Bruins. I mean, they played like Andrew. Pete played great.
Yeah, we covered DeBrusk. We talked about the 3rd and 4th lines.
Yeah.
We touched on Lindholm Carlos shutting down Matthews. And we covered, I mean, one thing, actually, so I was just going to get to this anyways. If special teams ends up remaining like big advantage Bruins, that can make this a short series as much as anything. Bruins go 2 for 5 on the power play. Leafs 0 for 3. Both teams' power plays were struggling down the stretch. The difference is the Bruins have totally changed up their units and seemingly found something where now both units look pretty good. We saw, that the Pasternak-Shattenkirk unit score against Ottawa after, I think they had also scored against, was it the Pittsburgh game when Shattenkirk first went in for McAvoy? And then game 1 against Toronto, it's the new McAvoy-Marchand unit with DeBrusk net front that scores twice, both by Jake DeBrusk. So all of a sudden now the Bruins have 2 units that look pretty good. Meanwhile, the Leafs, their power play struggled down the stretch. They still haven't seemed to figure anything out. And they're the ones going against a way better penalty kill. The Bruins, one of the best penalty kills in the league. Leafs have struggled on the PK all year. Like, if the Leafs can't get their power play figured out real fast, that's the kind of thing that could, really end up swinging this series in the Bruins' favor, especially if the Leafs are going to be undisciplined. Now, presumably, Sheldon Keefe is raking them over the coals about stupid penalties.
He kind of did in the press conference already.
Yeah. So you would think we'll see a little more discipline from the Leafs, but if they can't stay out of the box, they might be in trouble.
I mean, I think the Bruins and Brad Marchand in particular kind of has Toronto right where they want them, because Domi and Bertuzzi, they're trying to flex their muscle early on in the series, and they're skating to the penalty box. The Bruins are scoring the power play, and now their head coach is calling them out for. So now you think Max Domi is going to be hacking Marchand off the faceoffs next game? No, and now Marchand knows that, so now he's going to take his little liberties here because he knows Domi's in the doghouse with his coach. And I just think that I think Domi is I think he's trying to teach the teacher some things, but he's still the student a little bit.
Would you consider how well they played on the power play a game 1 surprise, or are you thinking maybe I feel like 1 goal would have been but 2 goals on the power play, I think that's a little bit on the surprising side.
Yeah, a little bit, and the fact that it was that second unit. I'm calling, I guess, the McAvoy-Marchand unit the second one, but that was the one that we really hadn't seen get going yet. So for them to break through twice, I guess I'd say that was a little bit of a game 1 surprise.
You know what I'm not surprised about, but just really happy to see come to fruition is the leadership and the playoff experience of Pat Maroon. That was his first game, by the way, last night, playing as a Boston Bruin in front of the Boston Bruins faithful. He's only played 2 games, both on the road. So for him to come in a playoff environment and play the way he did, you look at him and you say, yeah, he's been there. He's done that. He knows when to pick his spots. He knows when to get on the forecheck and just not even put a guy through the boards, but just lean on him. And he also put the guys over the boards too. But I wasn't surprised in the least to see Pat Maroon do what he does best in that situation. But I am surprised in the sense that he's coming off back surgery and it looks like he hasn't missed a beat. So in that sense, it's surprising.
I'm going to shameless plug the article that I spent all my time last night on until 1:30 a.m. that I wrote a story about Pat Maroon last night. That's why I didn't get a lot of sleep. So it talked about, some of the things that the players, Carlo, Marchand, and then Maroon himself, talking about the leadership and what he was saying on the bench and why he's brings that besides the physicality, why he brings such a valuable veteran presence for them as a leader.
Well, I can't wait to read that. Very much looking forward to that. Yeah.
It also has that nice video of him hitting Liljegren. So in case you just want to find the Liljegren hit, it's also in there.
Is there a picture of you guys at the popcorn stand?
Oh, I have all the behind the scenes shots of Scott getting popcorn, Scott taking pictures of popcorn.
I meant with Maroon.
With Maroon? Well, he's
talk about your 9th floor meeting.
No, I saw Patra. Maroon was on the ice, so Patra, nice. Never seen him go for the popcorn, but
Oh boy, Bridget, you know what I'm trying to do right now? I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of how I'm going to spin my argument next podcast if Swayman plays game 2 and gets absolutely shelled. I don't think that would happen now, but I'll have to get creative in that situation.
I mean, listen, if they do start Ullmark, now like I'm thinking like the negative of my side. If they do start Ullmark and he stinks and it's a tie series, I might just not show up, guys.
I was gonna say he's gonna slink into a hole somewhere, just like.
I mean, Scott, I would love to live in that world of yours where there's no downside to things. Oh yeah, rotate the goalies. They're both gonna play Osman and win. Like, no, of course Ullmark's gonna win. And maybe Ullmark does play game 2. Maybe he does win, and rotation is very much on. But regardless, it's gonna get to a point where like there's a game 7 situation, and you might have to break the rotation. So that's kind of why I'm saying like I'm not focused too much on like one guy playing back-to-back games, because that's going to happen at some point regardless. Even if they do stick to this rotation, there's going to be a point where one guy, they have to make a decision on one guy, So I just think when you're starting the playoffs, you haven't gone out of the first round in 3 years. Can we not mess around with the goalie? Can we go with
have they rotated goalies in any of those series?
Oh no, we're not doing this again.
They were up. They were up 3-1 on Florida, and they should have gone with Swayman earlier, and they didn't. So I'm not saying not to rotate goalies. I'm saying the 50-50. It's too black and white thinking.
He's laughing at you because you took the bait that time, Brian.
I know. Anyway, okay, so we're off and running in the postseason here. We're game 1, Bruins win 5-1, and here we are talking about switching goalies. I think we're probably good to wrap this up, right?
Yeah, I can maybe go to sleep, finish my DeBrusk article. Yeah. Not in that order. Probably finish.
We got a set. So it's like 5 o'clock Sunday right now, and so there's a second game on right now. There's still 2 more playoff games to go. Mm-hmm. I don't think I'm gonna make it through that 10 o'clock game though. I gotta be honest, guys.
Oh God! As soon as this gets posted, I'm out. I'm recording everything.
Florida went up 1-0 on Tampa, though.
Yes, they did. I watched that.
But yeah, bit of a dud, I would say, for game 1. Not as much animosity as you would think between those two teams to start the series, especially knowing Florida's MO.
I think Florida has to play they can't play the full Florida style against a team that can make them pay on the power play the way that Tampa Bay can. Good point. It kind of takes a little bit of their juice just to try to be more disciplined and not do what Max Domi did and not do what some of the other Leafs players arguably did against the Bruins. So,
which, by the way, is another getting too far ahead of ourselves here, but another reason for the Bruins to get their power play going and keep that up is if you are going up against Florida in the second round, you want to be able to make them pay for, some of their shenanigans that can potentially land them in the box.
Yeah,
definitely. All right. Well, that'll do it for us. Episode 304. The Bruins and Maple Leafs are playing game 2 Monday night. So we'll be posting sometime on Tuesday, presumably. We'll try to upload an episode after maybe each playoff game if we can. I think that's probably the plan. So
we did 2 for game 1.
That's true. So there might be a little bit more skate pod in your feed than our normal 3 episodes a week. So for Bruins fans out there, hockey fans, if there's any Maple Leafs fans listening, welcome to you guys.
Man. You know what? Yeah, this week I've gotten the meanest comments that I've ever had on any of my social media, and I do not think it's a coincidence.
Really?
I think we got some angry Leafs people tweeting and commenting and stupid.
Scott's burner accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that too. But I was going to say, so far the Leafs fans I've heard from on social media have actually been just extremely defeated. When I've tweeted out Bruins lines, I get Leafs fans quote tweeting who are we're going to lose to a team that has Pat Maroon and Danton Heinen on its first power play unit. And then after the second goal last night, it's we're losing to Johnny Beecher and Brandon Carlo. They're just they've accepted defeat well before the series even started. And now Razor's talking to us about they're turning on William Nylander,
which is insane.
Apparently they just don't believe that it's actually a serious injury. And
it doesn't matter if it's not. And an injury, like sometimes you have something happen in your life that you have to be safe rather than sorry with a diagnosis of something. Like speaking personally, like to get on him over something that they have no information about is crazy to me, because it's not always on the ice stuff. Like people have health issues that come about out of nowhere because their body just does something weird or you know, freaky, and you just want to be safe. So it's for someone who's played 7 years in a row, why would you think this is the game he would want to miss because he's being a baby? Like, that's not really logical to me at all. So, and what I'm trying to say is I think that there's a mixed bag of Leafs fans. Some of them are, I was watching videos of Leafs fans that were out in Toronto watching the game on that big screen. And some of them were very, very confident that that the Leafs were going to sweep the Bruins. There's a whole different myriad of types of fans, and just like there are here. So,
well, anything can happen, you know, so a sweep one way or the other, technically possible, and fans go to bat for their team, sometimes irrationally, sometimes rationally. Bruins fans are guilty of the same.
Or go to bat against their team. It feels like that's kind of
one or the other. Yeah. I mean, if I'm a Maple Leafs fan, like I think that something, if they're to bow out in the first round this year, I think something would have to give up front, probably with Marner or something. And I would also sit there and say, and I know that might be a hot take because Marner is an incredible player, but you have to be able to allocate the rest of your roster. And I would also question if Morgan Rielly is up to snuff as a top D-man compared to other top D-men who win Stanley Cups. I think there's just a little bit to be desired, maybe on the back end and elsewhere, that maybe some of that salary cap is a little top heavy with some of those key guys. So it's
a goalie might be nice.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe that would be something worth investing in. Hell, they could trade for Ullmark in the offseason. Who knows?
Yeah, it was just last summer that Ilya Samsonov got more in arbitration than Jeremy Swayman.
Yep.
Maybe that's a goalie rotation. Maybe they trade for Ullmark mid-series and he rotates over to Toronto. That'd be a tough situation for goalie hugs there.
Oh, yeah, no.
Obviously joking. We love Ullmark, but
by the way, I think we mentioned it earlier, but I'm tired and everything blends together. But William Nylander was on the ice Sunday at Warrior.
Yes, we did say that.
Yeah, for a very optional Leaf skate. So that probably only feeds into the criticism if he doesn't play game 2. They're gonna be like, he was on the ice. What's holding him back?
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see how that plays out. Bridget, I don't know about you. I feel like this might be the most animated, most passionate I feel about the goalie situation all playoffs. It's just to get him out of the gate here. I might be cool.
What happened to the Brian who wasn't going to talk about the goalies anymore?
Well, then I heard everybody saying that you got to go with Ullmark, and I'm just sitting like, what are you guys talking about? You're right. I
baited him back in.
I gotta get back to that. Well, because it's if you go with the guy that hasn't shown it against the team,
Scott,
this is a good team.
You asked them last time on 420, and it's not 420 anymore. So
I just don't know how Bruins fans could live with themselves if Ullmark goes in and sucks and they lose a series because you went with the wrong guy. It's like, but anyway, let's sign off because I can't do this anymore. I really cannot. I can't do this.
I'm looking forward to hearing what you say when we log on Tuesday morning and the Bruins are up 2-0 and Linus Ullmark just shut him out in game 2.
It's not going to happen.
That's my prediction. That's an official prediction.
There's no way the Leafs play as bad as they did in game 1, right? So I'm not predicting a shutout, no matter who's in net.
Here's my biggest gripe is that people are acting like if that were the case, Scott, like fine. But people are acting like no matter what happens in any game, they're just gonna rotate. Are we just not going to pay attention to what happens in these games? We're just going to stick to the rotation no matter what. And then your response is, no, we're going to go by feel eventually. Well, I'm just going by feel a little bit earlier than you, I guess. That's all I'm saying. Bridget, I can't. Like,
he got you a third time.
You got to please for myself and everybody listening.
Look at his face. Look at his face.
I think it's from the coffee. Probably is hot in here. I just can't do it anymore.
No, I'm talking about Scott. He's like got a Joker grin on his face right now.
He just likes to watch the world burn is all.
He lights it on fire and then he just watches it burn.
All right. Episode 3 of 4 is officially in the books.
Wait. One last thought. Scott, can you imagine if this goes game 6, we get all the writers in the bus? Like we're I think we mentioned this before, potential of getting a bunch of the Boston writers in a van. And then we just start the ride by just going, okay, who plays in net game 6? And then just we fight the entire 8.5 hours to Canada.
Well, that's the beauty of it, Bridget. You talk to anybody who's ever played the game at the NHL level, and especially goalies, and they're all saying one thing, and then all the hockey writers are saying another thing. So who am I gonna who's correct here? The hockey writers or the goalie?
I guarantee you, all of the writers that we put
What
in
the
this
hell
bus-
does Henrik
bus-
Lundqvist know? I'm
What does
smart.
Lundqvist know?
I'm smarter than him and better looking.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Scott.
He's got
And better fashion too.
Scott's got a point there. He's got a point there. Much better hair too. All right. All right. We gotta go. We gotta go. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will talk to you after game 2. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.